has it gotten easier or harder to be an ambitious woman?
Ooh, that is such a good question. I think the first thing I would say is that our voice is more important than ever. But Ebony magazine was the honor of my career. The thing is, by the time you need a relationship, it is too late to build it. Again, unless it's a charity, it's a business. And if it's a business, you have to find how you're going to turn a profit. But in my experience, the universe has never given me an opportunity that I don't personally think I deserve. Ooh, I've been burned.
Yeah.
I have been
And
burned. That was a lesson, a very difficult lesson to learn, but I learned it good. Right now, I'm a debut novelist in my 50s, right?
This is what I read. Is this true?
Uh,
Welcome to the Her Agenda podcast. On this episode, I have Amy DuBois Barnett. Amy spent nearly 3 decades deciding whose story gets told and how. She was the editor-in-chief of Honey Magazine, Teen People Magazine, and Ebony Magazine. And she made history. She was the first Black woman to run a major mainstream magazine in the United States. She has held leadership roles at Paramount, Hearst, Disney, ESPN, Time Inc., just to name a few. And after building and transforming some of the most iconic media brands in this country, she has now finally released her debut novel. If I Ruled the World is out now, and it's already headed to Hulu with a TV adaptation that she's co-writing with Lee Daniels. And Oprah Daily has called her book the first can't-miss page-turner of 2026. It is an honor to have the Amy DuBois Barnett here with us today. Amy, thank you for sitting down with us for the podcast. Really excited to have you and to be able to chat in person about all your amazing success and this debut book.
I appreciate it.
Of course. So we love to go deep on everybody that we feature here. And so I'm going to have some quotes and I'm going to quote back at you and want to get your take on it.
Okay, now you've been warned.
So the book takes place in the 90s, and you say it was a very perilous time to be a woman, especially an ambitious one. You said that in an interview you did recently.
Mm-hmm.
You started writing the book in your 30s, shelved it for 15 years, and finished it now. In that time, has it gotten easier or harder to be an ambitious woman?
Ooh, that is such a good question. I would have to say both on a certain level because, when I first started my novel, it was like you said, many years ago. And I didn't really have the perspective on the era that I had when I finished the book because I was still in it. I was still I started in the early 2000s and I was in my mid 30s and I just didn't really had the insight to analyze the era. But then when I came back to this book, when I picked it back up after all of those years, because the story wouldn't leave me, and I looked at the plot again, and I realized that it wasn't just about a woman who wanted to be an editor-in-chief. And, it was really about an era that had a lot of rampant misogyny. Right. It had a lot of, kind of rampant sexual violence and sexual harassment. There was a lot of racism. There still is a lot of racism, but there certainly was in that era. And I wanted to write about that and also the cost of ambition. You know what I mean? So when you're coming up in that era, there's a lot more firsts. Like I was a first, for example. I was the first Black woman to run a major mainstream magazine. There were more sort of firsts in that era.
Mm-hmm.
And fewer so now. But now, women are being pressured in a different way, around our ambition, around our agency, around our independence. You know what I mean? So I think it's different, but equally challenging, I think, to be an ambitious woman. There is a price.
What do you mean in a different way? I don't know if anything comes to mind when you think about the now versus then in terms of what makes it easier or harder.
Well, I would say that, there are more powers that be, from a governmental perspective that are more interested in, seemingly more interested in women having fewer
powers. That's an interesting way to put it.
Less independence, less ambition, less opportunities to make money, and they're more invested in, the way in which we're able to procreate.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I mean.
And I want to actually dive into your past a little bit. Your career shaped a lot of the book even, and I, once upon a time when I first got in media, always wanted to be editor-in-chief of a magazine. But by the time I got in the industry, magazines were starting to fade away. So I never got the chance. But now through the book, I'm sort of getting that opportunity. But you walked into Ebony magazine, and before you even had a job, you sent Linda Johnson Rice an unsolicited email full of ideas. This is what I read. Is this true?
Did I say that somewhere?
Yeah.
I said that I sent her unsolicited.
Yes.
Well, probably what I did, because Ebony was Ebony was an amazing, amazing, job. I mean, I was, my first editor-in-chief job was Honey Magazine. And that was like the joy of my career, probably like so much fun, the fun of my career. But Ebony Magazine was the honor of my career.
Okay.
And, but they reached out to me at first, but probably what happened, because I literally don't remember, but I would imagine that, once I got the job and I was, slated to move out to Chicago and start running the magazine, I probably, knowing me, sent Linda a bunch of ideas like, hey, I haven't started yet, but this is what I'm thinking about. So I'm sure I did that.
And you completely redesigned the magazine from top to bottom, increased the sales. You really reshaped and retransformed that, which I know came with a ton of challenges probably because, even though it's a legacy and we love and adore the brand, it's still independent. It's still Black-owned. With Black-owned media, you don't get as much resources and the advertisers don't see the value, so the budgets are smaller.
Right.
And even after you had all that success with limited resources, you still took the moment to just say, okay, I did that. I can walk away now. Right. Tell us a little bit about that moment, that decision. What made you feel like it was the right time to walk away from that after you built it up so much?
I really loved running Ebony. I mean, was the magazine of record for African Americans for decades, right? I mean, my God, and the opportunity to just touch that brand at all. And then certainly I got to, redesign it from top to bottom and redo the mission, redo the logo. I mean, it was incredible. But I'd been there for 4 years. And, I think after 4 years, someplace, you really kind of make a mark in a certain direction. 4 years is a really good, I think, run, for many different types of jobs, for many different types of brands.
Yep.
My son was getting a little older. He was sort of turning like 7, 8, and I was like, where do I want to raise him? I just gone through a divorce. So I was like, where do I want to raise him? Where do I want to be? Like, what kind of life do I envision for myself? And as much as I love Chicago, I was like, I just don't know that I want to raise him here. I don't know that I want to keep this same kind of schedule. And I'm just not sure that I can do much more with this brand at this time. So I was like, okay, let me go. I ended up teaching a media marketing class at Kellogg. Okay. And then I was going to maybe do that for a little while. I figured out next steps. And then I got 2 job offers in LA, and that was it.
Okay. That moved quickly then.
It did.
And so it was just really looking at where you are in this season of your life.
Yeah.
And it almost seemed like you saying you were ready put the signal out to attract opportunities to you at that time too in parallel.
Exactly. That's exactly that's how it works. For me at least, and for most people that I know at a certain level, your opportunities come from people you know. They come from people who've heard you say, thinking about, doing this or moving there or what have you. And then when those people hear of another opportunity that comes up, they can be like, oh, have you talked to Amy? Because she was just saying that she's, open to a conversation about whatever. And so that's exactly how it happens. It's partially putting the energy into the universe, that you are, receptive and it's attractive energy, and partially just straight up, talking to people, and getting them to be your advocates in rooms where you are not. Yeah.
You're excellent at that, it seems like, without being just overextended, it seems like. How do you balance that?
It's the key to networking. People think networking is like, getting somebody's contact information and figuring out what you want from them and then reaching out and asking for stuff. I mean, that's not networking. That's not effective networking, at least. Effective networking is, first of all, only being in touch with people that you genuinely like, being authentic about it. Yeah. And then building relationships. You know what I mean? And then as you're building a relationship, asking what you can do for the person, not necessarily what the person can do for you. And if you're not in a position to do something for that person at that time, you still reach out with, hey, I saw an article on this thing that you did and congratulations, or, something that isn't just always, this is what I want, and you build a relationship. Because the thing is, by the time you need a relationship, it is too late to build it.
Very true.
You cannot build a relationship right at the time that you need it. It doesn't work that way because it feels transactional. So networking is something very different than what people, and I've really absorbed that over the years.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about you being at an independent Black-owned media company. You also have seen inside, corporate, what they used to call mainstream media. And right now we're in a time, and you sort of alluded to this, that's very political. DE&I is getting dismantled. Black-owned media is getting defunded. Brands are pulling back. So as somebody who has sat on both sides, the corporate suite and the independent route, what do you say to independent Black media publishers, owners, leaders that are trying to hold on right now in this moment?
I mean, that's a very difficult question. It's such a difficult question. I mean, I think the first thing I would say is that our voice is more important than ever. I mean, even as, media in general is under attack, there is a clear and obvious attempt to discredit, any type of legacy media or, real journalism. So even as media, the entire industry is under attack, certainly Black brands are under attack even more, right?
Yep.
And it's at a time when it's even more important to bear witness to what's happening in this country and around the world. I mean, this is just, we're at an inflection point where, we definitely need our perspective in the mix. So I guess the first thing I would say is just to acknowledge how important our perspective is. I think that, one of the things that's been difficult for, smaller media brands, of which, Black brands are disproportionate.
Yeah.
It's hard to pivot. It's hard to figure out like the different ways that, different revenue streams that make sense. And it's hard for everybody. I mean, digital media, overall is very, very challenging for all companies, but certainly for these independent companies and certainly for Black companies where the advertising dollars are drying up and it's becoming that much more difficult, to get traction, So, I think that there's just a need for all media companies to start to like really look at their business model and try to figure out where are the revenue streams that are untapped. You know what I mean? How can you support your mission?
Yeah.
Because these are businesses. At the end of the day, unless you're going to go, was it 501(c)(3), you know what I mean? If you are going to, then do that. If you're not, and you want to remain a for-profit company, then where are you going to get your profit? You have to really figure out how you're going to fund your mission. Because I think a lot of people falter in that step.
Yep. Yeah. And think outside the box, get creative.
Exactly.
And I would love to get your perspective because, everything happens in cycles. We are experiencing this moment, but if you look and study history in terms of independent media, Black-owned media, women-owned media, we've been through these things before. And you can always learn from what has been done in the past. Has there been any moment where you had to really think of outside the box in terms of how we're going to bring in eyeballs, how we're going to bring in revenue dollars, and still stay true to the message and the vision?
Like everywhere I've worked. Like every single place I've ever worked in my entire life. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's tough for a lot of folks in media and just a lot of journalists in general is really understanding that, again, unless it's a charity, it's a business. And if it's a business, you have to find how you're going to turn a profit, even as you are, mission driven and even as you're trying to, inform, empower and entertain your community, right? You have to make money. And so I think that's one of the things that separates folks who end up making it past a certain, level of seniority is the ability to do both, to be dichotomous, to be both creative and business oriented. For me, it's been, creative business, textual and visual, in front of the camera, behind the camera. It's so many different things that you
were in that era where the editor-in-chief started to have to be on the morning news and really be a face, and the internet was just starting up. And
all the dabs. We go age be like that now.
I remember that time. I was there as well.
We had an abacus that we were using to do our
It was a magical era, though, really. I mean, it might have been scary, like similar to now with AI. People are like hesitant, afraid, but it's it's like if you jump in, figure out how it can work for you, and actually can be a positive thing. And when you look back in hindsight, it's like, wow, that actually was a magical time because now I'm in the struggle period.
Right. I mean, there was the first big wave of digital happened, of digital media happened in the 90s, like the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so print kept going, and then digital kind of rose again in like the sort of, 2000 somethings. So it's true. I was definitely there for the first part of that big digital wave. I was, what did I do? I was a nightlife editor for, I was like totalnewyork.com, like one of the first like digital websites about the city. So I was like literally going to clubs and like writing about it on the website for, my job for a little while. Mm-hmm. So yes, I suppose I was a part of that. That's true. Okay, fine, I'll take it.
A groundbreaker, she is the woman who saw what was not working and decided to fix it herself. She's building a business, leading movements, creating platforms, changing policy, making space where there wasn't any before. She's shifting the entire landscape for everyone coming behind her. Her agenda is honoring 50 women like that. Women who are redefining what's possible in their industries and communities. Know a groundbreaker? Nominate her today. Let's make sure her impact gets recognized. The Groundbreakers is launching in 2026. Nominate a woman today. I want to talk about the evolution and the journey behind your debut book. You started it at one phase of your life, put it on the shelf for 15 years, and then picked it back up because you said that the story was calling to you. It still needed to be told. It was still relevant, even more relevant actually today. And then you have the perspective now of not being in it in terms of the journey, but, being able to reflect on it and really give context there. What would you say about who you had to become in order to get this novel over the finish line?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, I am a very different person than I was when I first started the book, and part of what changed in me is not just my ability to have a more clear-eyed view of the era in which this book is set, because I've got those years of insight driven by, perspective that takes time to develop. But I think that I am also much more clear about my goals and about how to manifest. Like I'm now a world-class manifester, and that really helped me as I was not just writing this book, but as I was, finding a publisher and marketing the book, and then getting the development deal for the television adaptation of the book with Oscar-nominated Lee Daniels set up at Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like all of those things required a tremendous amount of work.
Yes.
A lot of relationships that I've had for, a long time. And also the kind of very intentional energy that only comes from, manifestation.
Yeah. Can you talk to me about your manifestation process? What does that look like?
For me, it's not like cutting pictures out of a magazine and putting them on a poster board. I mean, that may work for some people. That's just not how I do it.
Okay.
I first of all I just see my goal, like, and I see it very clearly, you know what I mean? And I understand that it's not like I'm going to, like, I don't think about, okay, what can I do to get to my goal, right? I think, who do I have to be? Like, how am I walking through the world in order to be the person that has this goal, right?
Yeah.
And then I see it clearly. And then, I kind of understand that I deserve it, right? Because in my experience, and maybe it's different for other people, but in my experience, the universe has never given me an opportunity that I don't personally think I deserve.
Yeah.
If I don't really understand and think I deserve it in my body, then I don't get it. So I have to see the goal very clearly, put intentional energy toward it, and then know that I deserve this goal. Like, know that it's mine. You know what I mean? Like, this is my goal. Like, I just have to really, really kind of just know it and speak it into existence.
Yeah.
And then I do the work, and then, like, you can't forget about the work part of it. You can't just be like, oh, I really want this. No, you have to, like, it's so much work, right? You have to really, really do all of the work that is involved in getting to a very challenging goal, even as you're putting intentional energy toward it, even as you're understanding that you deserve it, and that you are being the person who already has this goal all of those things like wrap together. And that's what, for me, constitutes manifestation.
And you had to make time and space to write as well.
Yes.
In the midst of you being in this era, this sort of executive entrepreneurship kind of era is how I would describe it, because you wear many roles and wear many hats and have many roles. So what did that look like of like, carving out the time to sit in front of laptops to actually write?
I wish I was one of those people that had like a schedule and stuff. Like some people I'm like really jealous of. They're like, I write every day between like 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. And I'm like, what? Like, and that's bad actually on a certain level, because writing really is a muscle. I mean, you just have to, like, a huge part of it is just putting your tush in a seat, opening your laptop or your notebook or whatever it is you're writing on and doing it. Like just breaking the seal and getting her done. And then the inspiration comes, or sometimes the inspiration comes first, but really mostly it's you just got to do it.
Yeah.
So honestly, I would write it at weird times. Like I would write in the morning. I would write late at night into 4 a.m. I mean, I would do it at different times, like as long as I could, But I did put one little thing in place where my fiance, I would give him every chapter as I was done so we could read it. So I actually I'm really good at deadlines. I love a deadline.
Yes.
And so it was good because he would be like waiting for the chapter, like, where's my chapter?
And that helped reinforce the deadline.
It was super good because I was motivated to give him the next chapter because he was like, where is it? That was fun.
Yeah. And you talked about your power of manifestation and really seeing yourself with the goal and becoming that person. And it's interesting. I'm reading a book now called Mind Magic that was written by a neurologist. And so he understands the brain and the mind. And he talks about that specifically. Like, you need to see yourself and visualize yourself living that life after you achieve the goal. Because otherwise, when your brain encounters that moment, it almost rejects it. It's almost afraid of it. And once you've already visualized that it's happened for you, then your brain can more easily accept it. And so I love hearing that that's been your experience and perspective, reinforcing all the things that I'm reading. Talk to me, though, a little bit about, you wrote the book, you got the book deal, and then you're talking about the adaptation, and that seems to all be coming at the same time. What does that actually look like under the hood? How was it with negotiations? I know that can be very difficult. What can you share about that experience?
I mean, first of all, I'm so excited. When I was writing this book, I could just see all the scenes playing out, in my head, because there's so much detail in the book. I mean, it really takes you behind the scenes of this really important cultural era. So there's so much of the language and the fashion and the sort of cultural linchpin moments of that era that are in the book, and I could just see it. And so I always knew I wanted to be on screen. And I really I was manifesting a TV series, versus a movie. I wanted a TV series. And so when the book was acquired by my publisher, that's when I got a film and TV agent. And, and then a book scout discovered my book and gave it to a powerful Hollywood executive. And she read it and loved it. And then she gave it to Lee Daniels, who read it and loved it, right? Yes. And then we all met. We decided we're a team. And then we spent about a little over 5 months developing the pitch, which takes a very long time. Is very, very hard. So we spent 5 months developing the pitch, and then another probably month practicing it. And then we sold it, twice in the room, actually, to 20th and to Hulu. And so now what that means is that they've optioned my book. And we have a development deal for the television adaptation they've set up at Hulu. And so I'm signed on as a writing executive producer. So I'm working with Lee Daniels to write the pilot right now, the pilot script. And the hope is that, the studio and Hulu like the pilot and greenlight the filming of the pilot, and then like the pilot once it's done, so they greenlight the series.
That is amazing. And I'm so excited as a fan and a potential watcher, because there's not a lot of shows that show us in the way that you have built this world within your book. There were a couple of shows recently that came and went, and they were so good. And there's a gap right now. And so I wasn't surprised to see the announcement. I was surprised, but not surprised. I was very happy But I just could only just imagine the journey behind the scenes of getting a show like that sold.
Oh my God, so much work. This is what I'm saying. It's funny. I have been saying this more and more lately. I don't know why. Maybe it's just, again, the perspective one has with the years of, doing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that when people see folks in like glamorous roles, things that are sort of visible positions, or things that look like they're, again, kind of, like, I don't know, glamorous.
Yeah.
I think folks underestimate or don't process just the amount of work that it takes, to get these positions. Yeah. It takes so much work. And so I think that's
And then there's the moments in between, right? Because there's been plenty of opportunities, I'm sure, that have come across your desk where you thought it was a sure thing. And they said, yeah, we're going to sign contract next week. And then next week comes and goes.
I've been burned.
Yeah.
I have been burned.
You think it's actually happening. You've already signed. You're waiting on the counter signature, and something happens.
That literal specific thing happened to me. That literal and specific thing happened to me. Keep going.
So I just would love to get your perspective of when those moments happen. How do you stay sane? How do you stay positive? How do you keep going? And if you can unpack if any of those moments almost happened with the book, with the deal, or the TV show, I would love to get into that.
No, I totally. I mean, honestly, it happened to me one time it's happened to me many times over, with many different things, like in a smaller way, but it happened to me one time in a very big way with a job offer where I had literally signed the contract and I was waiting for the counter signature. And then the CEO of the company pulled my offer after 2 months of negotiation, because it was at the mouth of the 2008 recession.
Oh, wow.
And so I guess he gotten some numbers, for his company performance, and he was like, I can't do it now. You're too expensive. This was after I already resigned from my other job.
Yeah.
Because I was just waiting for the counter signature. And that was a very difficult lesson to learn. But I learned it good. And, I have not since then, I'll be honest with you. I mean, in my mind, truly, like, it is not done until it is signed and the ink is dry.
Yeah.
I just don't have that in my heart anymore after being burned in that particular way.
Yeah.
Nope. Yeah.
Yeah. But then it's interesting just being someone who is a manifestor as well. How do you hold those two truths at the same time?
I probably was not as good of a manifester back then,
Okay.
as I am now. I think that's just one of the things that I've developed, over the years. I mean, that's not true. I guess I was always good at manifestation on a certain level, but now, of course, I'm have all these years of experience, and perspective,
Yeah.
To do it in a different kind of a more focused way. So so I think there's partially that. And I think also, as good as one is at manifesting, sometimes things just don't happen. Or they do happen, or they don't happen at that time, or, you don't get this because you're meant to get that, or something is in there, so I think that at the end of the day, I try to also, because I've had tons of successes and tons of failures and tons of wins and tons of losses, and so many things have happened to me, and the losses and the failures and the things that I don't get, I always try to let them inform who I am and give me more insight and give me more strength. Do you know what I mean? Give me more perspective. So then when I come back around, to the next thing, I'm coming with all that information and knowledge, like in my
just like Nikki in the book.
Just like Nikki in the book. Nikki and her character arc.
Would you say Nikki is you in a certain world or a certain way? Like, what ways is she you and what ways is she not you?
Yeah, the question of the hour. I understand why people are asking, because there's clearly some similarities between me and Nikki, my protagonist. But it's really not a roman à clef. If I Ruled the World is a work of fiction.
Okay.
And so all the characters are fictionalized. And, I would say that Nikki is somebody who is much more naive than I was.
Okay.
And she's much less confident. And she also has many different, sort of aspects of her character. You're very different than me. And you can see that her decision-making in the book reflects that. I made a lot of decisions coming up, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't make the decisions in If I Ruled the World. I mean, those mistakes. I didn't make those types of, errors. Again, in part because, I had a different level of naivete. I was you know, Nikki's somebody who was swept up in the industry, and she really let herself get swept up, in a way that I was able to be more measured around because of, again, like this perspective, that I had. And so, I was certainly offered all manner of things by all manner of music artists and executives. And, if I had led with something different, other than my intelligence and my work ethic and my goal orientation, I might have taken that condo in Miami that was offered to me. I might have done that. You know what I mean? But I definitely did not. Whereas Nikki, my protagonist, as she's being swept into the industry, in this sort of sea of like being a fish out of, water and trying to, kind of understand who she wants to be and what she's willing to become as she goes for her dreams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's somebody in that particular moment in her life when we first meet her, not the end of the book, when we first meet her, she might have taken that condo in Miami, that the baller offered her because she didn't have the wherewithal to say, no, thank you. Actually, I'm good.
Yeah. To understand what came with that. Yes.
That's exactly right.
Yep. You've lived many lives, many industries. You lived in many different cities. You speak multiple languages. You really sort of live what they could call, a Renaissance life, so to speak. And I think you've said before that you don't really subscribe to that concept of timelines or like having to do certain things in a certain order and that kind of philosophy. And it's different than a lot of, I think, most women feel. They feel like by a certain age, they need to have the job, the whatever it is that is on their list. And so what would you say to women who, might be feeling behind or might be feeling like they're in a timeline that's not aligned with what they planned for themselves?
I think that whatever timeline you're in is the timeline you're in. Like wherever you are is where you are. It's like, it's sort of like, how I think about loving yourself, I mean, if you're going to love yourself, you have to love all of yourself. You can't just love the parts of you that you really, really like. You have to love all of the things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that, and that kind of includes like this timeline, you know what I mean? Like if you're wherever you are in life is where you are, and, you could just take the learnings you've gotten, to date. And you can start right there. You can start to manifest right there. You can start to figure out like, how you want to walk through the world and what's going to make you fulfilled and what's going to make you happy from wherever it is that you sit, because we're all on different timelines. I mean, it's so easy to look around us. Like social media just makes everybody nuts because you just look around and you're like, so-and-so has so much more and so-and-so got this deal and so-and-so got that and they got this press and they got, they have this many followers. I mean, just so many things like in life right now are designed to, make us competitive and make us nuts and make us not feel good about ourselves, but honestly, just like hold yourself and know that you're all you got. And wherever it is you are, start there. Like, that's it. I mean, I'm a debut novelist in my 50s, right? Like that's what it is. Like people, have said really lovely things to me, during this book launch, in interviews about my career. And I'm happy to talk about all of it because it's been an honor to represent, communities that I care about over all these years in media. But really at the end of the day, this is my first novel. It's my book baby. And I'm just a debut novelist hoping people like love her book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this whole TV development deal, I've never done this before. So I'm trying to figure out like how it all works, so.
And it's really a testament to delay is not denial because you studied creative writing when you were in undergrad and you didn't get a chance to really flex that muscle fully. You've been in media, you've written before, but to do a full novel, it's happening now in your 50s versus.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, actually what happened is I got an MFA, a master's in fine arts in creative writing in my 20s. And so this novel is a return to my original dream of being a novelist, that I had again, 30 years ago. And now I'm back in it. So it's just incredible to be in this space where I'm able to realize a goal that I've had for such a long time.
Well, congratulations. I'm very excited about this moment. This book was definitely needed. It is so entertaining and you literally can picture it in your mind when you read it. So I cannot wait to see it on my TV screen soon. And thank you so much for all you do to represent us, to represent women, and to represent what it means to be ambitious in this world today.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me. This was an awesome conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Her Agenda podcast. You can get all the details and show notes on heragenda.com. Since 2008, Her Agenda's mission has been to bridge the gap between ambition and achievement. And we hope today's episode did just that. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it, tag us on social media at Her Agenda, or leave a review or all of the above. Until next time, see ya.